So because she had explained what the Oncotype test was, to my understanding that it was, that they would test the tumour for, I think, 21 different genetic markers, and based on that they could calculate the likelihood of recurrence. So it came back sort of medium low or quite low. So they were able to reduce the amount to just 4, rather than having to keep going for 6.
And you mentioned that you started chemo in February?
Yeah.
And then you finished in May?
It was actually middle of April, the 16th of April was when last one was. So it was like 1, 2, 3. Oh wait. So this 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 4 cycles. So for the last
every 3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks. So it was a 3-week cycle, and thankfully I didn't have any infections or anything like that. So.
Okay, so no complications.
No complications. I did have to take the injection, the Neulasta injection. Do you know about that?
No.
It's self-administered, once per cycle, crazy expensive. It's like €1,000 or something, but mostly covered with the
by insurance, yeah.
And you just stick it in yourself, pretty much. But it stimulates your white blood cells, so that your cell, the counts stay quite high, and it isn't wiped completely out by the chemo, so it reduces the chance of infection, basically.
Okay, yeah, and that's good. When the first cycle went fine.
First cycle, I had a weird pain in here, or weird feeling here. They were like, "How are you getting?" And I said, "I feel a bit weird here." So straight away it was stopped. Everything was stopped straight away, and they had me on oxygen.
Okay.
And they scared the shit out of my mom. And so I had some back pain and stuff. So that was a reaction that does sometimes happen. So they just dosed me up with antihistamines, and
that's when the high temperature came up.
No, I think that was just my body reacting to the chemo. It was just a spike. It happens anyway, like your temperature is whatever, so you do have to keep an eye on it, because it's when your immune system is so suppressed, it's one of the only signs of infection, so they do ask you to monitor, but it spiked sort of most evenings from the Wednesday or Thursday, it spiked all the way every day up till the Sunday, but it was really high on that, and I was worried about it, so we just went in. So they then every time I would get, so before it was just the anti-nausea drugs and the steroids, so then I was getting those and antihistamine and something else. There's 4 different things anyway that I was getting.
And that was before?
It was just before my chemo, so they kind of do it all, because I had my Borgia cast, so they would just do that all intravenously.
Okay.
And then they start the chemo. So, but it was fine.
And did that help? Just to have
there was no more reactions, so that was fine.
Okay.
And it was kind of cool that they were really, really quick off the mark. They were they're very good at explaining what's happening, and so that was pretty cool. So. And
this was with the nurses in the day unit.
The nurses in the day unit are amazing. And the doctor, what's her name? She's often up on the 6th floor. She's a Muslim lady. She's quite young. She's adorable. Ellie, that's her name. She's really, really nice. So she had, I think she was the one that was there. No, it was Anna was a different doctor. Anyway, they had explained that sort of stuff and written the prescription. So for me, it was pretty clear what was happening all the time, which I think is important. I mean, I imagine if maybe you're a bit confused or you're not, you don't want to know all that sort of stuff, it's different. But for me, I was like, I like to know exactly what the drug is, what it does, why I'm taking it. And they did all that, so that's good.
And everything went as planned, so there was no delay with chemo and things like that.
So that was, once that initial reaction happened and they mitigated it with they waited a few hours, waited till all the pain had gone and stuff, so then they just did it again and it was fine. And then each cycle from that, then I had those extra drugs beforehand, so they knew to mitigate in advance. So, yeah.
When did you start to lose your hair?
So I chopped it all off in advance. So before my first session, I cut it sort of short here and longer, like a little more. And then midway through or sort of after the second cycle had started, it sort of started coming out in little chunks here. And once that sort of started, I was like, no, not. So busted it all off, or I went to the barber and she cut it all off for me. Now, it didn't end up all falling out. I had like the really white hair, the really, really colourless hair. Some of that stayed, but there was so little of it, I just kept it all buzzed because it looked awful otherwise. So, yeah, and I had gotten fitted because insurance covers your wig, so, and they had kind of explained that as well, so, and explained the breast care nurses told me the company that was good to go to, and you know, they gave me information about support services and stuff like that as well.
And did you take on these support services?
I was full of plans to. I have now. I went to. There's some free counselling sessions, so I've gone to that. But the thing with a lot of those support services is that most of the people accessing them are older. They're I mean, I don't know. And there's lots of kids cancer stuff that maybe not the Irish Cancer Society, but there's, you know, there's canteen for people in their teenage years. There isn't stuff for people in maybe their 20s and 30s as much. You know, the kind of the middle, or maybe
it's
even
young adults.
Yeah, so maybe from the age of 20 to 45 is sort of that awkward age where you're young to have cancer, but you're not a young person with cancer. You're an adult with cancer. You're just
Plus, in those, especially for women in the age of between, let's say, 28 or like 40, is because they are like, usually women want to have a family and start a family, have kids, and it's not the same conversation as you do with teenagers or with
that's true. I mean,
older.
That was one of the things, like the day of diagnosis. She was like, and you know, it will have an effect on your fertility, so have a think about whether you want to freeze your eggs. I was like, not this on top of everything. Oh my god. So, but you know, that was a conversation that my partner and I had to have as well. So, lucky enough for us, it was pretty simple. We just said no.
Okay.
We don't have kids. We weren't ever planning on having children, so it was a fairly simple one for us. But you know, for somebody else who was maybe not actively wanting to have kids, but might in the future, I can see why that would be an attractive option. But it's just more pain and more work on top of everything else.
Yeah. And after the chemo, you had radiotherapy?
No, surgery.
Surgery.
That's the next thing. So, chemo finished middle of April was the last session, so there was sort of 3 weeks of that. So there was sort of a 6-week window between the last chemo and when they like to have surgery. So I ended up having one on the last day because basically it was going to be a little delayed and stuff. But I mean, I went on a week. Once I finished the chemo, went on a weekend away with my boyfriend.
You should, right?
Yeah. Just my chemo. And the Dr. Westrup had said exercise for an hour every day. So that was a thing that I was quite focused on, was getting on the treadmill and going as much as I could and trying getting my heart rate up, because boy oh boy does it make a difference. The chemo really changes things. And surgery was like super straightforward, you know, and they explained that, you know, we're going to, you know, make an incision here on your breast, we're going to remove the tumor, and we're going to remove a border around the tumor, and then we're also going to do a sentinel node biopsy. So that was fascinating. And they explained again, you know, that inject the radioactive stuff and the dye and see which lymph nodes are the ones that the breast drains to, and we'll take those out and test those as well. So it was really clear what they were doing again. And, you know, again, it was clear that the multidisciplinary team had been talking to each other, that they had decided that if we do the chemo first, we reduce the tumor, surgery is easier for everyone, you know, and then
it's a win-win, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it has no material